Hey guys, Tags here, and the Bahrain GP just finished. We're going to be taking a look at the post-race reviews and my 7 points that we learned from the Bahrain GP. So we're going to be covering everything from Ferrari to Aston Martin to Williams. In case you all already didn't know, this was the results for the race. So we have Verstappen in first place. He won the race by a mile, followed by Perez, who wasn't even challenged. Alonso got a podium, which is very good for Aston Martin there, followed by Carlos Sainz in fourth, Lewis Hamilton fifth, Lance Stroll in sixth, followed by George Russell in seventh. Valtteri Bottas, Pierre Gasly, and Alexander Albon rounds off the points. So the first thing we're going to be taking a look at is the problem at Ferrari right now. So Ferrari's woes have continued this season. It looks like it hasn't improved at all, even after all the changes they made to their entire backroom hierarchy over there. Like Binotto got fired, everything happened, but it's the same issues over there. So the first thing they had was Leclerc's issue with the battery pack. So before the race itself, they had to replace his battery pack, and they used the second one for the season in the first race. And that's an issue because you only get two for the entire season. And the main point of that is even the second one died in the race. And it's not even the first season, like the first race of the season that's finished yet. And they already used both of their control electronics and battery pack. And that's gonna be a big blow for Ferrari right there because Leclerc is supposed to be the leading man in the championship, and taking a 10 place grid penalty in like the second or third race of the season, it's just not going to help that cause right there. So yeah, he retired on lap 40 when his engine suddenly just gave way, which caused a virtual safety car. He parked it quite reasonably over there, so it was a pretty good place for him to park. It was uh not a very long virtual safety car, and didn't cause much of a change to the race because it didn't really affect anything other than the fact that he was running in podium position. So he was about to come in third. He was just like, what, 17 laps away from third, and then his car just died. And then we'd have to talk about Carlos Sainz. So, Carlos Sainz, he didn't look on the pace the entire weekend so far. I mean, the car this year he said was better for his driving style. So hopefully he gets better throughout the season, but in the first race so far, as you can see from this graph, so this graph is each driver's lap times throughout the first 12 laps of the race. So it's that first stint before the pit. And you can see Red Bull is just insanely quick. They have like a 98-second lap time. And yeah, and Charles Leclerc is about 7 tenths down in lap 2 itself already, followed by Carlos Sainz, who's about a second away from them throughout the entire stint, away from Max throughout the entire stint. So Sainz really did not have the pace to close up or even challenge either of the Red Bulls actually this race. So hopefully we can see something better. But right now, for this race at least, Sainz did not have a good weekend. It looks like he's not fully settled into the car yet, and it also could be a setup issue with Ferrari. But the one good thing that came out of this weekend for Ferrari was their pit stops, because they got the fastest pit stop, and they were one of the fastest throughout the entire weekend. The one good thing that came from this weekend for Ferrari was their pit stops, because they got one of the fastest pit stop timings on average throughout the entire weekend. They were the fastest compared to all the other teams, and they even bagged the fastest lap award. So hopefully they can continue to keep this up. We saw like from the past few years, Red Bull have been on point with the pit stops every time, but this time out Ferrari did beat them just about, but they still did. Next up, we're going to talk about the Red Bulls, which were just flying throughout the entire weekend. They just have an insane car with insane pace, with two very, very good drivers. So it looks like they might be just winning every race of the season. They looked untouchable. They looked absolutely untouchable. And this kind of proves it. So what you're looking at over here is their lap times on the softs and the hards. And if you just look at the softs and you compare it with Aston Martin, Mercedes, and Ferrari, Red Bull's average lap time was just so much lower, even from the beginning. And the tire wear was so good as well. They were able to manage their tires because of the downforce level that they have. They're not sliding around as much, and that allows them to have better tire wear because it wears out the tires less. And yeah, I mean, even on the hards, you can see that pace was just insanely quick. Nobody could match them. Maybe a few times, like Aston Martin or Mercedes would put in like a quick lap and then they have to back off right after that. But overall race pace, it was just insane. It's also shown from the previous graphic that I had. So, this is from racefans.net. But yeah, in the first 12 laps itself, you can see like almost 7/10 quicker than Leclerc every lap, and then a second quicker than Carlos every lap. So it's just a domination there, utter domination from Red Bull. And even not even after the first pit stop, so even in the second stint, I mean, keep in mind this is a tire difference because Ferrari did go onto the hard tires, but Mercedes chose to go on the softs. But the pace difference is just insane. Like 97.5 versus a 98.5. It's a 1 second delta again. So Red Bull able to build that lead even more every single lap and allow them to pit after that and still come out ahead anyway. Another thing that made Red Bull so quick and so good was their strategy, because they were one of the only teams to go on to the softs after the first stint. So they went soft, soft, hard versus the soft, hard, soft that a lot of the other teams did, or the soft, hard, hard. And this kind of allowed them to maximize their delta on the soft tires because they were able to stretch out the soft tires for almost as long as the hard tires, but at a quicker pace because they did not suffer the degradation that some of the other teams did. So yeah, I mean they got a 1-2 in qualifying, they got a 1-2 in the race. They didn't get the fastest lap unfortunately, but it was sheer dominance by Red Bull over there. And one of the hardest things for Max to do this weekend was just to drive onto the podium thingy. So it just shows how good their car is, and I think they're pretty much set for the season. Unless one of the other teams can bring like a massive update and like do something completely new, I don't think anyone will be challenging Red Bull this season, which is kind of unfortunate to see in terms of a sporting perspective, but for Red Bull, it's a very good thing. Next up, we have the Aston Martin. So Aston Martin had a very good weekend here. Albeit they could have probably done better without Lance Stroll, I'll be honest. I think Felipe Dragovic should have driven because Lance is still recovering, and if he still continues to drive and he has long-term issues, especially with the wrist as a driver, it's going to be pretty hard in the future seasons for him. But yeah, Aston Martin had a very, very good weekend. They were just up there. They beat Mercedes. They were okay, they weren't right behind Ferrari. They were the third best team on the grid, and good reliability. And the best thing about them is because of the downforce that they're generating, they're generating a lot higher downforce than Mercedes, which is allowing them to have a lot cleaner drive and also a lot less tire slip, or like which causes degradation. So in terms of degradation as well, the car is very, very good. If you take a look at the graph there, you can see that the gradient of the line on the softs, especially on the softs for Aston Martin, is a lot less steep than the Mercedes, which means that it's wearing out its tires much less. They're able to keep the consistent lap time a lot better than Mercedes was. Mercedes started off faster, but the degradation was through the roof. You can see, like, compared to Red Bull, which has the least steepest line, which means they're able to consistently just hit those lap times, which is already much quicker than everybody else, which is why they're so dominant right there. And on the hards, Mercedes was slower. Just straight up, they were slower. They were slower than every team at the start, except for Ferrari. Then Ferrari also had a worse tire degradation on the hard tires, which meant that Mercedes did go a bit faster than them, but still nowhere near the speed of the Aston Martin. Because if you see the entire Aston Martin line is lower, which indicates that it's just faster lap time throughout the entire stint that they had. So basically, Aston Martin have had a much better year. I mean, start to the year at least compared to last year. You can see that they worked really hard in the winter, and it's a huge jump from last year for them, especially like after all the results that they had. The car was just garbage last year. They they didn't go the right track last year in terms of the regulations, but I think they really learned from it, and I mean they may have copied a team here or there. We've seen that before, haven't we? From the exact same team before. But yeah, I mean Alonso podium first race of the season. You never know, it could be more. But they really have to keep working hard. But it's gonna be tough for them to keep up with Mercedes development because of the amount of money that Mercedes is able to put in. I know there's cost caps, but in terms of sheer resources, Mercedes will win in that battle with Aston Martin. However, Aston Martin have a lot more uh, wind tunnel testing time, which will help their already good aero to be better than Mercedes, and they are getting Mercedes engine, so it could be like a back and forth battle throughout the season between uh, Mercedes and Aston Martin. That's one to look out for the rest of the season. Next up, we have the Williams F1 racing team, which have been in the mud the past few seasons. They have been utter trash. Their cars were so draggy. They were basically an F2 team in F1. But this year, they seem to have gotten grips with the regulations quite well. They have improved from last year. They were okay last year compared. They were about matching Haas, or sometimes bettering them. But this season, it seems that they have taken that step forward to be somewhat from like an average of 20th to like an average of like 13th, 15th. So it's a pretty decent midfield team. So far, at least from the first round at least. They did score points. So if you saw 10th place, Alexander Albon, 1 point. So it's a great start for the season for them. It's been a while since they scored points on the opening race, I think. But yeah, it was a pretty good performance from Logan Sargent and Alex Albon. Both of them had decent weekends. It was a great debut for Logan Sargent. Not many issues here or there. But yeah, it's a team on the upswing. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully they can continue the development and just improve their car throughout the season. But I don't think they'll be overtaking many other teams. The thing that made them really good was their pace on the hard tires over there. If you look at the graph, they were quickest in using the hard tires, but their degradation was a little high compared to the Alfa Romeo, which was just consistent. But in terms of pure lap time, it was pretty decent for them on the hard tires. So it's a good start. It's a good start for them, but we'll have to see if they're able to keep that up. Even on the soft tires, you can see they were quicker than Alfa Romeo, but it's just that the degradation kicked in a little bit more. So they were much better off on the hard tires compared to the other runners in the midfield. Next up, we have Alpine's mixed fortunes. So Alpine, where do we start? It was a great drive from Gasly. He started off last, but he ended up in the points. He got 2 points, so he ended up 9th, which is a very, very good recovery drive. I think their strategy was really, really good in terms of trying the undercut on everybody over there. I think they were the first ones to pit on lap 8, and Gasly was the quickest for the 3 stoppers. So you can see the strategy was decent enough to push them up the field, and their pace was quick enough to stay ahead after that as well. Yeah, so Gasly pit on lap 9 in order to undercut Guan Yu Zhou, which worked because Guan Yu Zhou came out way down the order after he pit on, I think, lap 12, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, it was a very good drive from Gasly, good strategy from the team. And then we come to the other side of the garage for Alpine, and it was a race to forget. I'm gonna assume this is like the most number of random time penalties given. Because first it started off with an issue on the grid, so incorrect grid position, but honestly I didn't see anything, but I didn't see much of it either, like they didn't show much of a replay of it, but it was not a good start for Ocon. And then you had a 5-second penalty, which the team did not serve properly, which caused them to get a 10-second penalty after that. And while going in to serve the 10-second penalty, oh no, sorry, when he was trying to serve the first 5-second penalty, while entering the pit lane, he sped, which caused another 5-second penalty. So he got like 20 seconds in total. And on the radio, he was pretty cheesed off about it. He was saying about how like he does this all the time, but mate, if you did this all the time, you get a penalty all the time. But so Alpine did their best with him, but they really could not do much considering the amount of penalties and the number of times he had to pit. Next up, we have the issue of McLaren and they just had such a bad weekend all around. They found out that reliability is terrible. Both drivers retired, although one of them retired towards the end. So he did have 6 pit stops though. So maybe it was just good pit stop practice for McLaren over there. But in terms of for Piastri, he came in, he tried to change his steering wheel if I'm not wrong, and then the car just refused, and straight up he just had to retire over there. So he had an electrical issue, followed by Norris, who had a pneumatic issue. But it was the only good thing about that is their race pace was really good actually. So in terms of their pace, their lap times during the race, they were quite competitive, and also they were matching one of the points paying position times. So I think without their issues, they would have maybe made it to the points, but it's just that this weekend was just not good for them. I think they really have to learn from this mistake and try and improve the reliability of the car because it just seems like everything's going wrong for them. I don't know what happened from last season. Last season they had a decent car, and I mean the year before was even better. But I don't know how they went downhill so quick. But it seems like they have gotten grips with the car, and they're learning how to get the best of it. Because yeah, like I said, it was really good race pace. They look like they were probably challenging the midfield. And then we have the issue of Mercedes-Benz. So they had a not so great race. I mean, the qualifying was decent, just that Alonso was pretty good with his lap time. It's just unfortunate that Mercedes couldn't beat him. But I think the issue with them is the lack of downforce, which is a fundamental problem of the car right there. They lost ground to Red Bull compared to last year. Red Bull is just on rails this season. They almost stayed stagnant or even just ended up worse because their car is just not able to generate the downforce enough to keep those lap times up there while maintaining the grip in the tires and maintaining tire wear. So they were easily beaten by Fernando Alonso. So if you look at the graph right here, the green line is Alonso, and you can see consistently he's just quicker than the Mercedes across the entire race. This is lap 0 to lap 57. You can see the green line is lower, which means it's a lower lap time, which is a faster lap time. And except for maybe was that lap 4 to like 7 or 8, he was basically quicker than the Mercedes throughout the entire race. And it seems that the thing that caused that is just the superiority of the Aston Martin's downforce. Yeah, so as you can see from this tweet from F1 Data Analysis, it was just the Aston Martin was better than the Mercedes because of the downforce. So the wear rate could be better on the Mercedes. I think like they are from the past few seasons they have had issues with the tires almost like every single season. Sometimes it's heating up issues. Sometimes it's well in Baku a few years ago for Hamilton it was the magic button. But yeah, the only good thing for Mercedes this season is the fact that they have the resources, they have the money to go and improve the car a lot more than Aston Martin does. And they do have the history of improving the car. So I think they won't be happy with the results, but they achieved what they could the most. They were what was it, fifth and sixth. So they were ahead of one of the Aston Martins at least. So this will be a good uh battle throughout the season between Mercedes and Aston Martin, which I think will go back and forth. But I'm kind of confident saying that I think Aston Martin will stay ahead of Mercedes. I think Mercedes fundamentally the zero side pod concept of the car is just not working out, and I think it's time for them to change. So that's it, guys, for my race review of the Bahrain GP. Next up, we are going to Saudi Arabia, which will be an interesting race as usual. The first two races were insanely entertaining, but we'll see what happens this season. I think the order won't change much. I don't think many of the teams will be bringing many updates, but I'm hoping to see at least a bit more closer racing towards the front because Red Bull is just running away with it at this point. But yeah, that rounds it off. And like, subscribe, comment, and let me know what you think. I'll see you guys next time.